Welcome to my Nature's Wisdom series. Today, I'll be shedding light on the beautiful willow tree. Hello everyone, I'm Spirit Hawk, the Native Magi on Facebook, Elder Council Member and Shaman at Montauk American Indian Council in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Welcome to the series today. A tree is a living creature. It eats, rests, breathes, and even circulates its blood. It also provides a home and shelter for animal life. It provides shade and prevents erosion of soil. Trees are critical for habitat, and they're the biggest and longest living plants on the planet. They help keep the Earth's ecology in balance, transforming carbon dioxide into oxygen, and they make the world a livable place. Trees speak to the child in us. Most people I've met have their favorite tree just as they have their favorite animal. We've climbed them, played in them, hugged them, and even built houses in them. And I'm a firm believer that we should periodically climb a tree as long as we're able to do so, regardless of our age. Much of their appeal has to do with their powerful and inviting energy. And although not always understood, every tradition upon the planet has honored the great spirits that inhabit the earth in the form of trees. The tree has its roots within the earth, and its branches extend to the heavens. Because of this, it serves both as a wonderful symbol and a powerful tool for opening the energies of heaven and earth for us. Trees serve as a home and shelter for a wide variety of animals, and thus they are a natural tool of the shaman. Ultimately, work with trees will strengthen your focus, increase your abundance, and develop your awareness of all signs in nature. They mirror so much about us that they will speak to us clearly about our own life and what is unfolding within it. Today I'm going to be speaking about the willow and its wisdom. It teaches us to be flexible and look for connections and trust inner visions. Willow is important to watery ecosystems because it stabilizes stream banks and provides shade that helps to keep the water cool and clear so salmon and other species can thrive. Moose, deer, and elk rely on willow as food, and beavers use it for building material. Willow flowers produce vast amounts of pollen and nectar that bees and other insects rely on. All willows grow best in moist areas, and they're often found along ponds, streams, marshes, and wetlands. These habitats should be studied as well for anyone whom the willow appears as a messenger. Willows are water-loving, and water is an archetypal symbol of the feminine energies of birth, creativity, intuition, and the moon. Willows are fast-growing trees with a bitter and astringent bark. All varieties have limber twigs and branches. There are a number of varieties, some of which fall into the tree category and others into the shrub category. The willow is a magical and healing tree. Its name literally means convolution, and where there is convolution of energies, the willow is associated with it. It stimulates an energy of healing on many levels, especially though in the areas of herbology and aromatherapy. And its meanings to us are often multidimensional. There is rarely a single message from a willow. It's always multiple and many-layered. Willow alerts us to new opportunities to learn and explore. It encourages a flexibility of thought with its energies. Willow is associated with the awakening of the feminine energies and of going into darkness of the womb and activating greater expressions of them. Its spirit opens night vision, or vision of that which has always been hidden or obscured. It reminds us to use the rhythms of the moon to look for dream messages of importance. Willow will always stimulate great dream activity, and her message always involves learning to trust our inner visions. Willow awakens flexibility, and encourages many avenues of exploration when it appears as a messenger. It alerts us to powerful opportunities for communication, and it has ties to all deities of other worlds and other traditions. The willow tree is associated with the goddess Brigid of Celtic mythology, and Willow's spirit can help us invoke and align with those energies. It is also linked to Orpheus, who brought Greece the teachings of music and nature and magic. Willows also awaken clairaudience, the hearing of spirit. In Europe, there are tales of travelers being frightened at night while walking through the woods. They made claims of the willow tree spirits following behind them, muttering in their ears. When the gift of clairaudience first begins to awaken, the sounds are like a soft muttering. Willow trees make one of the very best dowsing tools. This is partly due to willow's strong connection to the water. Just carrying a piece of willow in your pocket can make you more sensitive. When you're near a water source, you'll feel that piece of willow. For some people, it vibrates. For others, it gets warm or cool, but there's always a response from it around the water. Wands made from it are powerfully effective for wish-making and all water magic. When properly worked with in meditation and magic, willow wands and staffs help us realize the very intimate link between our thoughts and the external events in our very own lives. The pussy willow, as shown here, is also one of the favorites in the willow family. A very powerful plant, the pussy willow has an essence that can help us in divination and reading signs. In fact, it's good for almost any form of divination, and is tied to the archetypal energies of the future. It reminds us that there are promises yet to be fulfilled, and it renews and revitalizes, awakening the inner fires of hope and inspiration for that which is yet to come. Willow is a richly storied plant that has been valued as an anti-inflammatory, pain reliever, fever reducer, and bitter tonic for thousands of years. It was used and documented in a 4,000-year-old tablet from ancient Samaria and was perhaps the most important of 700 medicines mentioned in the Ebers Papyrus from Egypt in 1534. In China, Europe, and the Americas, it's maintained mythic status for countless generations. In 1827, a French chemist named Leroux extracted the principal active substance from the willow and named it salicin after the genus. Salicin is thought to be converted into the more bioactive salicylic acid in the body. In 1860, salicylic acid was synthetically synthesized and became cheap and easy to create without the need for the beautiful willow tree. Unfortunately, salicylic acid is caustic to the stomach lining and can cause various side effects, including bleeding and ulceration. In 1890, a young chemist named Hoffman, who worked for the Bayer Company in Germany, found an acetyl ester of salicylic acid. They marked this as aspirin, a drug that has risen to become the most utilized medicine in the world. The medicinal value of willow has seemingly withered away in the wake of cheap and accessible synthetic drugs like aspirin. Yet I believe it still holds a rightful place in our medicine cabinet. Willow bark contains fiber that slows salicin absorption, along with tannins that tone irritated membranes and reduce bleeding. Willow is also bitter, cooling, and diuretic. It can help to relieve heat and swelling associated with injury, arthritis, high blood volume, and other conditions. Like aspirin, willow helps to prevent blood coagulation and assists in keeping the waterways of blood flowing smoothly throughout the body. Willow contains the plant compounds populin and methyl salicylate. Populin is found in cottonwood and contributes to its anti-inflammatory, fever-reducing medicine. Methyl salicylates have a minty or wintergreen smell and can be found in higher concentrations in some willows. These salicylates are noticed with some Alaska willows, and a lot of people seek them out for topical medicine because it's so cooling and pain relieving. Willow can ease headaches, arthritis, muscular pain, cramps, swelling, and flu-like symptoms, fever, and urethra and bladder irritability. It doesn't work on every occasion, but it's definitely worth a try, and sometimes it actually does magic. Willow is an excellent first aid remedy and almost always available when you're in the wilderness. It is effective for treating stings, painful swellings, cuts, burns, and other injuries. The willow tree contains vitamin C, which helps to heal tissues. Tannins in willow act as an astringent to swelling. It also acts as an antimicrobial and pain reliever. You can make a poultice by mashing up the bark or leaves, or you can make a strong tea and place it over an injury. The tincture can be used as a liniment, as long as there is not an open wound. While all willows are medicinal, the medicine strength can vary depending on species and where the plant is growing. Be careful to harvest willow in an uncontaminated area and give the bark a taste and smell test. You want it to smell a bit like wintergreen and taste wickedly bitter like an aspirin with a tart vitamin C afterkick. This is the good stuff. Many herbalists have their favorite variety of willow, and once they find a stand, they go back to harvest year after year. It's useful to develop a relationship with a specific stand and watch how it changes over the years due to your foraging and changes in the environment. Willow bark and the small branches are the most potent part of the plant and can be harvested in spring or fall. February and March, when the twigs are growing fast and the buds are swelling, seem to be the best time for willow harvesting. If you're harvesting from a large willow tree, cut the newest branches and peel the bark and large twigs with a knife. Small twigs can be easily cut with garden scissors or clippers. To make willow oil, cut the bark and stems into small pieces and place them in a double boiler. Cover completely with an extra virgin olive oil or another oil of your choice, and heat very gently for several days, turning the oil on and off so that it doesn't boil. Strain with a piece of muslin cloth and place the oil in a glass jar. This will last about a year in a cool, dark place. To make willow tincture, place fresh cut bark and twigs in a glass jar and cover with vodka or brandy. Cover with a lid and let sit for at least 2 weeks, and shake the jar every few days to make sure the herb is under the liquid. Strain and bottle in a glass jar. If you're using dried willow bark, I recommend measuring the weight of the herb. For every ounce of dried willow, use 5 ounces of vodka or brandy by volume. Place in a jar and let sit 2 weeks as above. The dosage is 30 to 60 drops. Tincture will last 7 to 9 years. To dry willow bark and stem, place it in baskets, paper bags, or a food dehydrator on a very low setting. And you can store this also in a dark place. The tea can be very bitter, even for brave souls with flexible palates, and is best mixed with other herbs or taken quickly as a tincture or capsule. Up to an ounce of herb can be boiled in a quart of water and taken throughout the day. You can also powder willow bark and twigs in a coffee grinder and fill capsules with it. Take 4 to 10 capsules per day. Willow leaves can also be harvested for medicine in spring through summer and dried in baskets or paper bags. For tea, use 1 heaping tablespoon per cup of hot water and steep for 15 minutes. You can drink 3 to 6 cups a day. For pain-relieving bath, try several large handfuls of dried willow leaf in a pot of boiled water. Steep 15 minutes and strain into a bath. Willow is the quintessential remedy for someone who is hot, inflamed, agitated, or stuck. It cools and eases rigidity, transforms harmful anger into discernment, and clears the way. I've seen it help people who are bitter, rigid, and resentful find flexibility and grace. For eons, willow has also been associated with magic, feminine mysteries, and the moon. Holy wells in Europe are often marked by a willow tree. I recently heard a story about how a trained woman used a willow wand to find water for digging in a well on a large farm. And because of willow's connection to the water, it's associated with immortality in China. It is also associated with grief and death, perhaps because it soothes people who are in pain and having a hard time with letting go. All willows are edible, and some are not palatable. The leaves are very high and rich in vitamin C, 7 to 10 times higher than oranges. The inner bark was traditionally eaten by many native people, although it is very labor-intensive. Willow bark is high in calcium, magnesium, zinc, and other trace elements. Willow's inner bark was traditionally peeled in May and June, pulled apart and twisted to make rope for fishing lines, nets, and trump lines. Many types of willow are fashioned into baskets. Willow poles were used for fishing wares because they root where they're planted. Willow contains a natural rooting hormone that stimulates root growth called indole acid. This compound is highest in the growing tips. If a willow branch breaks off of a plant and travels downstream, it can easily root in a muddy bank. You can benefit by this by making a willow tree tea and using it to water cuttings or new plants. Place new shoots in a jar and cover them with hot water and steep for 24 hours. Some gardeners make willow water by placing new shoots in cold water and letting it sit for several weeks. New plants will benefit from just 1 or 2 waterings with this tea. You can place a willow sprig in a jar with a cutting when you're trying to get it to root. There's another benefit to watering new plants with willow tea. According to recent research, salicylic acid is involved in a plant's systemic acquired resistance. When a part of a plant is attacked by disease or insects, it increases salicylic acid and thereby raises its natural defenses throughout the plant. Plants can even convert salicylic acid into a volatile compound that can warn other nearby plants. When you use willow water on tender new cuttings, you may be helping them defend themselves. There is one big caution when working with willow tree medicine. Willow should not be used when someone is on anticoagulants like warfarin or heparin. While willow is better tolerated than aspirin regarding stomach aches and ulcers, it should not be used for those who have a salicylic acid allergy. There's much lore and legend surrounding the willow trees. The weeping willow is a common sign of mourning. In Louisiana, there's a saying, when a willow grew large enough to cast a grave-sized shadow, a family member would die. In the UK, no builders in the Fens used sawn willow, traditionally the wood of the gallows. Using this wood for any part of a built home would bring disaster to the family. The willow has been associated with the moon and is favored as the best tree to make divining rods. Plenty of cultures feature tales of nymphs or dryads that live in the trees. Oak is a favorite choice, but Alexander Porteous relates Czech's story about a nymph who lived in a willow. She ventured among humans during the day and returned to the tree at night. The nymph married a human man and even had children with him. Everything was going well until he cut down her tree. At that point, she died, and he made a cradle out of the wood. Her youngest child fell asleep whenever he was placed in the cradle. When he got older, he could talk to his dead mother using the willow tree stump. Other magical creatures also boast links with this tree. While rowan is usually used as the tree of choice to keep witches away, people in Essex planted willow near the door for the same reason. In mythology, willow was sacred to Hera, Hecate, Circe, and Persephone, all goddesses of the underworld. Persephone even had a grove of willows and black poplars. Willow as a flower remedy apparently alleviates bitterness. People who wore willow to show they'd been rejected, and you could break up with someone by sending them a willow garland. Meditating under a willow or wearing willow pinned on your clothing could help heal heartbreak or ease bereavement. And if you wanted to finalize that breakup, add willow leaves to your spells and use it in spells if your partner won't let go. Baker describes how people used spikes of willow among their vegetables to protect crops and animals. And others believe that striking children or animals with a willow stick stunted their growth. People once tied a sprig of willow around the churn so the fairies couldn't steal the butter. A Yorkshire marriage custom involved the willow. An unmarried girl had 9 attempts to throw her shoe at a willow on either New Year's night or on Easter. If it stayed among the branches, she would marry that year. Elsewhere, young men wore willow wreaths if they had been unlucky in courtship. And people have called willow catkins goosey goslings, since they look like goslings. In some parts of England, bringing them into the house meant actual goslings would not hatch that year. The phrase "to knock on wood" refers to the wood of a willow tree. I'm not sure why you'd knock on a tree, but it may relate to the secret-keeping capacity of the willow. Have a secret you want to keep? Tell a willow, and it will trap it within its wood. Wind in the willows refers to the elves whispering among themselves in the willows as people walked underneath. It's considered bad luck to burn willow wood. Weeping willows with branches growing up instead of down were even more unlucky, and the people were advised to cut those down. Yet you could secure a field from storm damage by planting a willow in it at Easter time. An Irish saying claimed willows had souls that spoke through music. In Poland, a belief existed that the devil lived near the willow tree, and if you sat under it and renounced your faith, the devil would pop up and grant you psychic powers. In Bohemian lore, the willow tree had a soul, and if you cut down the tree would die. Meanwhile, a West Country belief claimed the tree walked at night and followed travelers through the darkness. Weeping willows in a front garden showed the family had an unhappy life. This might explain the saying from the Turin that you shouldn't buy a house with a weeping willow in the garden. Do you fancy the power of prophecy? Take 99 leaves from 99 different willow trees, burn them, and turn the ash into powder, and eating it gives you the prophecy power. But I don't recommend this. A Greek proverb notes that men must pause to touch and smell a water willow if they pass one. Otherwise, they'll lose their sweetheart forever. The willow tree also has its place in religion. It was told that people hung crosses of willow around the house on Palm Sunday. Homeowners kept the crosses until the following year to protect the house. Keeping the crosses green in the water helped them act as thunder charms or could protect against mining disasters. It was usually considered unlucky to cut willow wood unless it was done on Palm Sunday. People took the wood to church to be blessed, and this helped it to guard against thunder, lightning, and disease. The willow droops as punishment for its use as Christ's scourge, yet many believe the willow weeps due to a line in Psalm 137, and I quote, "By the rivers of Babylon we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. There on the willow trees we hung up our harps," unquote. Newer scholarship actually thinks these trees were poplars, but the link to the willow folklore remains. Another explanation given for why the willow weeps is because it hung over the heads of the apostles while they waited and slept when our Lord suffers his agony, and ever after it has wept. Christina Oakley Harrington further notes that in Italy, people believed the willow wept due to the weight of angels' tears shed for Adam and Eve. This helped to explain the tree's association with heartbreak and dead leaves. Willow folklore even links the tree with the resurgence in nature religions. Druidry.org notes the potential link between those who followed the old ways as Wicca and Willow. The word Wicca referred to the abilities of these magical folk to manipulate and bend situations. Thanks for joining me today for my Nature Wisdom series, The Willow Tree. I hope you've enjoyed your journey here. Please subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed the content. I'll be bringing more about nature wisdom to you. And also, you can check out my Animal Spirit Guide, Animal Wisdom series, where you can learn all about nature, trees, flowers, birds, bugs, and animals, and what their messages can bring you to enrich your own lives. I'm Spirit Hawk, the Native Magi, at thenativemagi.com. You can send mail to thenativemagi@gmail.com or check me out on Facebook. We have a Native Magi page there, and we have a private group, the Native Magi. You can look that up and request to join if you'd like. Thanks again for joining me. See you next time. May Wakantanka bless you in all you do.